A reminder that every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Unfound Podcast channel on YouTube plays the Unfound Live Show. Tune in, talk to the other listeners, and get to ask questions to yours truly. On March 9th of 2018, this podcast first featured the somewhat well-known disappearance of Tiffany Daniels of Pensacola, Florida. Today, due to Hurricane Milton knocking out electricity for a couple of days at Unfound headquarters in Clearwater, Florida, we revisit Tiffany's still unsolved case with increased experience and updated information. I'm Ed Dentzel, and this is Unfound. But first, Unfound news. Hurricane Milton was an experience. The wind and rain were crazy and incredible. I lost power for about 65 hours, and that put me behind on my Unfound work. Hence, this revisitation episode. Please find a video of that hurricane night on Unfound's YouTube channel. Next, indictments have been brought against the wife of Shannon Collins and her daughter. Nothing regarding Shannon's actual disappearance, but a lot regarding his wife continuing to collect his disability money without telling the federal government that he is missing. Finally, going back to the topic of storms, I think I'm going to have to start examining a new type of disappearance. People who go missing during weather events, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. Considering the deathly floods that have happened in North Carolina and elsewhere. Horrible. Please contemplate these three questions as you listen to the interview with Tiffany's mother, Cindy, from 2018. Number one, are you inclined to believe the roommate's version of events regarding the day of Tiffany's disappearance? Number two, if someone else parked Tiffany's SUV out near the Gulf, does that mean more than one person could be involved in her disappearance? And number three, what is the biggest mistake investigators made early on in Tiffany's disappearance? I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Tiffany Daniels, Cindy Daniels. Cindy, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome. Tell the listeners a little bit about your daughter, Tiffany. First of all, how many children do you have?
I have two. Angela is our oldest, and Tiffany is the youngest.
And they are separated by how many years?
Angela is, let's see, Tiffany was born in 88. Angela was born in 84. That's 5 years.
About 4 to 5 years. Okay.
4 or 5, yeah, 4 or 5.
And how did they get along?
Oh, they typical sisters. They got along really well. They were very, very close. And of course, as you get older, you get your different ways. Tiffany was really into reading and art, and Angela was really into sports. So they both had their own little things in life that they enjoyed. So that kind of took them separate ways. But they did good. They were always getting along. Of course, sisters have their fights, but nothing big.
Okay, so two daughters. And you mentioned that Tiffany was very artsy, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in regards to her disappearance. But what kind of art was she into? Drawing, painting? What kind?
Tiffany, she did a little bit of everything. She did sketching. She did painting. She was into a lot of the new art. She was into, I can't remember what they call that type of art that she liked, but it was a little kind of wild art. I don't know what they call it.
Abstract?
Art.
Abstract?
Abstract, there you go. I believe it was considered abstract art.
Okay.
She did not like drawing buildings, but she loved drawing people and sceneries, things like that. She was a great artist. She did a piece on Audrey Hepburn that just really blew everybody in town away at how good it is.
Where do you think she got that from? Do you or your husband draw, or you said your older daughter was into sports? Just kind of a natural inclination to that, do you think?
I think it is, although I've always been a doodler and a drawer and always wanted to draw. Tiffany can just draw from her head. I more was a drawer of having to have something similar to the object I was drawing or the object to look at. She can just do it in her head. I mean, she's done still pictures too, but she can just come up with a scene in her head. I, on the other hand, did not get that well into the genes for the art side. my mom drew some, and my dad was a doodler, but I think Tiffany just picked up a little bit from everyone, and she just excelled with it.
And do you think that she decided early on, maybe in her teenage years, that that was going to be her profession in some way?
Oh, off and on. Um, she never knew how good she was at art. She never really thought she was that good, and I'm not sure why Tiffany never thought her artwork was that good. But she would say, yes, I'm going to be an artist, but she also wanted to be a marine biologist, and she was really into science and things like that. And then as she started getting older, she started getting into agriculture and things like that. So she really had a lot of good things there in her background that she could work with and that she was very interested in, had just not really nailed down exactly what she wanted to do with any of them.
And how did she do in school, let's say in high school? How were her grades?
Oh, Tiffany is very brilliant. She was always in the gifted program. She was in Brown Barge program, then she went on to the Pensacola High IB program, which she ended up graduating with several scholarships. And Tiffany was very, very brilliant, very brilliant.
And so she went to college, and where did
Yes.
she go, and what were her pursuits there?
Well, she started out in Pensacola College, and once she finished there, she went on to UWF, and she went back and forth quite a lot. She liked art, but she went back and forth, and she really had not decided for sure what she wanted to do, other than travel. She really liked traveling, so she did a lot of traveling to try to decide if she wanted to change her degree or stay in what she was doing. And she just really couldn't figure out what she wanted to do as far as that particular decision, as far as what degree she wanted. Finally, she majored in several different things over the years, but it was back and forth between art and the sciences. And she got an international studies BS degree. And with that, she was possibly going to travel and use that overseas somewhere to help some countries hopefully be able to be an interpreter or teach English or something to some of the students over there. She had talked about doing that, but just really, Ed, she was just trying to decide. All of her friends were graduating from college. They had all of their degrees, and so on that road, she changed her mind several times, like students do. But she finally did graduate with the international studies degree.
And did she pay her own way through college? And during all these, different degrees and changing her mind, was she living on her own by this time, or was she living at home?
Well, Tiffany, when she graduated from high school, she wanted to move out, so she had lived with a friend for a while, and they studied together, but they also took trips. They did a lot of backpacking. She took about 4 years off and backpacked through Europe with her friend, Hillary, and they did a lot of things together. They lived together for quite some time, several years. I think it was 4 or 5 years they lived together. And they went out west, and she just wanted to go travel, Ed, and we really weren't up for it, but it's something Tiffany wanted to do, and all the kids were doing it, and so we we let her go, do her thing for all those years to do what she wanted to do and travel and enjoy it. And then she came back home and said was done. She wanted to be home now, and that was it. And so she came back home after that, and then came back home literally and moved in.
And moved in back home with you for a while, though.
Yes.
When she did disappear, she was living on her own, and we'll get to that.
Yes, she was.
Okay. So in those, maybe the 6 months before disappearance, let's just talk about a few of those things in particular. First of all, what was going on with her work and school, maybe like the 6 months before she disappeared?
No, she was working as a tech, art tech, theater tech at Pensacola State College. She had already graduated with her degree, and she was working there every day.
Okay, and that was like, would you say that was a full-time job?
She had been there for several years.
She'd been there for several years. Okay. I didn't realize that they had enough theater productions and things to keep that busy.
Yeah, she had worked part-time with them while she was finishing up her at UWF, and she floated back and forth between the two colleges.
Okay.
She went to school at UWF and then went to work over at Pensacola State College.
And do you think that she liked working there?
They do summer productions too. She loved it. They do summer productions too. She loved art. Whether she thought she was good at it or not, she loved it, and she loved building the sets too.
And so that was her main job. And was she doing any additional schooling in those 6 months? So was she taking any classes, or it was just mainly work and that was it?
No, just work.
She had a boyfriend. Let's talk about him. How did they meet? What kind of relationship did they have? Did you think that they were a good match? Tell the listeners all about that, because that's going to play a part in her disappearance as well.
I really don't know how they met. When she decided to bring him around, and we met him. He's a very nice person, very intelligent. He worked here in town. He was into robotics. His job here at the place that he worked here has received numerous big grants and a lot of media for their robotics program here. And they were cute together. We absolutely thought he was just really, really nice, and we were very pleased to see that she seemed to be very happy with him.
They must have made a unique couple, being that he's into robotics and she's into art. That's quite a contrast.
Yes, it was. We laughed because we used to tease Tiffany. She was so brilliant, but she was also artsy. So we used to laugh at what a balance they were, that we had brains and art, but we weren't sure how to say it.
So you know what that means. She was in touch with both sides of her brain. You know, one side of our brains is very artsy and the other one's very logical. And those people that can access both are very special.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. How long would you say that they were dating before she disappeared? A year or 2 years, or what do you think?
Yeah, it was over a year that they had been dating. I wouldn't know exactly how long, because they had been just, going out socially and swing dancing and stuff. And I don't know when they actually had decided they were going to be boyfriend and girlfriend.
Okay. But they weren't living together, anything like that. In fact, you had told me that in the months before Tiffany disappeared, she was having problems finding roommates, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So she and her boyfriend were not living together. He had his own place, and she had her own place.
Yes, that's correct.
And once again, you said they were a pretty good couple. Ever have any issues with him at all, the way he treated your daughter?
No, not when we were around, and not that anything Tiffany told us about.
Now, let's talk about the roommate situation. Tiffany you said when she was done traveling, she came back to live with you, but then at some point she decided she wanted to live on her own again. So she moves out. Does she have roommates at that time? And what goes on with all of that? It was very difficult for her, wasn't it?
Yes, she had a friend, and he had a roommate, but they needed another roommate. And they had a house downtown in the historical district. And Tiffany finally decided to move in and be their third roommate. So they all lived in the house together down there. They were all bikers. They all had a lot of things in common, and both of them also worked at the theater.
But at some point, did some of them move out, or was somebody not paying the rent, so somebody got kicked out? Because those weren't the people living with Tiffany at the time that she disappeared.
No.
Do you have any idea what happened there?
Well, Tiffany and one of the guys there, Tiffany and Michael, became boyfriend and girlfriend and lived together for a couple of years, and were really close. And then Michael graduated and he left the area, and so they discontinued their relationship. Kyle was living there. He also worked at the college, but he decided to quit college and move back to, I think, the Fort Walton area. And so after they left, she had to start on different roommates, and she went through several. She would advertise on Craigslist and at the college and on bulletin boards and things, and she went through several. Some of them I never even got to really meet because they were in and out so fast. Because if they didn't have the money, they would just tell her then they didn't have the money. It was just later on, towards the last few months, that she had the girls that moved in that she was having issues with that she couldn't get the money from, and that's when she got another applicant that applied for their room.
Yeah, let's talk about him. We just have to we'll only use his first name. What's his name? And how did it happen that this guy who was quite a bit older than Tiffany actually moved in with her?
Okay, his name was Gary Nichols, and Tiffany had met Gary once before at his apartment where he hosted a Young Democrats event. His daughter, Noelle Nichols, was part of the Young Democrats Club, and they had a meeting there, and so that's how Tiffany met Gary and Noelle both. She briefly knew Noelle. They were not friends, but they were acquaintances, and that's where she met him. And his name had come up before about her wanting him, that he had asked to be a roommate, and we really told her we really didn't feel comfortable with it because of his age. Nothing against him or anything, but we just thought she might feel like she had a parent living there with her, and we just thought it might not be a good idea. But as time went on, she went ahead on this go around when she ended up losing her roommates and was needing more. He had a steady job, and so we did check him out. He did have a steady job, and he did work out at the base, and so at least we knew that he would be able to pay the bills, and we would just we'll just have to go along with it for now. And so he moved in about 2 weeks before Tiffany disappeared.
Only 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Even I know we've talked several times now, Cindy. I'm not sure that I knew it was that close to her time disappearing. Okay. And just maybe a note for the listeners, if you know that Tiffany's case has been on the show Disappeared back in 2016. In fact, Gary's daughter was one of the people who is on that episode, isn't she?
Yes.
Noelle. Okay. All right. So, all right. Was Gary the only roommate that Tiffany had at the time that she disappeared?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
The girls had moved out almost 2 weeks prior. I think the last one had left.
Okay. And now one more thing before we talk about that particular day. What was the situation with Tiffany and her phone, her cell phone? Did she use it a lot? What kind of cell phone plan did she have? Because that's of course going to be an issue here shortly as well.
She had the typical burn phone from Walmart, which we have since learned a lot about, and it was one that you bought minutes for. And we were always making sure that she had minutes, but apparently she had run out. She also had a house phone for her internet service and stuff, so she also had, it came with a phone, so she had a house phone also, a landline. But her phone had been out of minutes for over 10 days prior, apparently is what the police told us, for over 10 days before she disappeared.
did you realize that? I mean, trying to contact her. First of all, how far was she living away from you? You know, if you wanted to drive and see her, how far would you have to driven?
About 15 minutes. And
Well,
the message it gives you is it goes to your voicemail. So you really don't know they're out of minutes.
mm,
But if I wouldn't get her on one, I would call her on the on the landline. I would call her on the landline. But what was funny is that Tiffany, I might go all week and not hear from her, but she always came over on the weekend. She either came and spent the night, one of the 2 nights, or came over and ate, or came over and hung out, or whatever. She'd come over and stay. I'd feed her, or whatever, wash her clothes, whatever she needed done. And then if she was going to go somewhere, she'd leave, or she'd stay the weekend with us.
and that's probably the reason that you didn't worry too much if you tried to call her and she didn't get back to you, because you knew that you were seeing her, you know, maybe once or twice a week anyway.
Absolutely, at least every weekend. It wasn't unusual to go a week without hearing from her because of her schedule. Sometimes she stayed at the theater late, and rather than let me know she was out late and worry me, she sometimes wouldn't tell me. You know, wouldn't call me that night. She'd wait and call me the next day. Or
Yeah.
she rode her bike a lot. She rode her bike to a lot of places, so that's the reason we bought her a car. She had a funny little car, and we bought her the Toyota, and so she would have her car, and we wouldn't have to worry about her riding her bike all the time.
And would she ride her bike maybe sometimes from her place to your place?
She had. She
Yeah.
just absolutely drove us crazy.
Okay. Given the
Yes,
traffic
she
up
had.
there?
But she wouldn't let her take us home. We would we put it in the car and take her home. Or she had called before and we found out she decided to ride her bike and we'd jump in the car and go get her. I don't know why her father and I had an issue with that. I guess it's a safety. Must be a safety thing.
Riding bikes.
Yeah, bless her heart.
Yeah, I agree with you. Riding bikes on the public roads is crazy to me, but that's me.
It is. It's just to us very scary to me.
You were seeing her once or twice a week. She was coming over. How did she seem? What would you say was her demeanor in August of 2013? How was she doing?
I think the only thing bothering her is that she could not make up her mind what she wanted to do about the roommates and what she was going to do with that. But she seemed to be okay with everything else. And then...
What about her boyfriend? Her boyfriend, though, coincidentally, we don't know if this is a coincidence or not, but he ended up deciding he wanted to move to Austin, Texas, right before she disappeared. How did Tiffany feel about that? What was going on there?
Well, she was excited that he got the scholarship and got accepted to graduate school, because that's the highest. That is one of the best programs in the country for the robotics. And I know that Gray will go far in that field. It wouldn't even surprise me. His father was at one point, I think his expectations were to go to NASA and work for NASA. So it wouldn't surprise me in the least if he didn't achieve that goal. She had mixed emotions about going. She asked us, we're the type of parents that if there's an opportunity or a possible opportunity for our child or our children to grow and prosper somewhere else with a better opportunity, we're not one to say, no, we don't want you to go. We encourage them because the bottom line is they can always come home.
Yeah.
So we really did encourage her to go and try it. We were all for her going and trying it. If that's what Gray wanted and they had it worked out, whatever we needed to help her, did we need to help her find an apartment or them find an apartment together, or what we told her we were all for it, that she can always come home, not to even, take all of her stuff with her, just put it in storage or bring it to our house. And then, because we could always, come get her, or of course she had her vehicle. She could always come back home if she wasn't happy with it. So,
but she didn't go.
We thought there was good opportunity for her artwork there too, and that's what she was concerned about. She had been wanting to sell some of her artwork to see if people would buy it, what people really thought about it, and stuff like that.
But she didn't end up going to Austin with him. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, really did. She did tell us, I had my time away from home. I don't want to go away from home. I want to stay here with you all where you are. And we tried to explain to her we're just a car ride or a plane ride away from you. And, we've never been a family that thought that the miles really separated you from being a family. You can be together if you want to be together. There's always ways to work that out. But, we also, it's kind of hard to let them leave the nest again once they've already gone off. And, Tiffany was off and on for 4 years traveling and doing what she wanted to do. So we already felt like we had said goodbye to her once on that respect and let her go spread her wings. So it was kind of hard for us to go along with again, but we knew that it was the best thing for her. She seemed like she was stagnant with her work and what she wanted to do here, and the opportunities with theaters here was limited. And when we looked into it, there were a lot of theaters in Austin and stuff that she could get work at. So we really were very surprised when she didn't go.
All right, we're going to come back to that topic a little bit later. But so once again, coincidentally, boyfriend leaves one day, I guess on August 11th, and then on August 12th is when Tiffany actually disappeared. What do you remember about that day? Let's put it this way, what do you know about that day now? About what she did, where she was, who she saw?
Well, we now know that the day that Gray left, that they had breakfast at Tiffany's house together. We know Gary was there, and we know that Gray was there. If there was anyone else there, I don't know of it. And after he left, Gary said that she seemed okay, or like she was maybe a little depressed, but not much, and that they were going to watch a movie together later, is what he said. We didn't talk to her that day. For some reason, she didn't call us that night. We didn't even know that Gray had left early. We weren't sure what time he was leaving, and we didn't talk to her that day. We talked to her the day before, but not that day. And then actually we talked to her on Friday before that. It wasn't Saturday, it was Friday that I talked to her. And then that's all we know. And then the next day, she got up. Gary says that he heard the door opening and closing between the hours of 3 and 5 in the morning, 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. He kept hearing the door open and close and open and close and open and close, like Tiffany was going in and out and in and out. And then when he got up at 7, he said her car was gone. So he assumed she had gone on to work.
Okay. And did she go to work? Did she show up for work that day? And once again, I know you didn't know this at the time, but what have you found out since then about what her day was like? Did she go to work? What did people say? Anything like that? What do you know?
She apparently went to work. Apparently she told her boss that she was going to be out the rest of the week because she had to take care of some things, that she might not have gas money for gas that week, but she had to take care of some things. And that's really all we know about that part. So and as far as coming home, the police have confirmed that there was activity on her computer, her laptop, between the hours of 5 and the time her car was clocked going across the bridge. She was on her computer. There were entries of her being on the computer. They said she was viewing some pages of different things. Nothing that gave them any clues, roommates, stuff like that. And then the next thing was her car being clocked going across the picture being taken of her license plate going across the bridge at 7:50 that night.
So really pretty much it seemed like maybe a regular day for Tiffany. Nothing maybe the out of the ordinary, going to work, working at this theater, doing whatever the job that she had there, maybe working on backgrounds for these theater productions or whatever. But then she tells her boss, whose name is Bob, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit. She says to him that she's going to be out the rest of the week, which sounds to me like multiple days. Does that sound kind of unusual to you when you found that out? Did that sound unusual to you?
No, it did sound unusual because usually if she's going to be out off of work like that, we would know. She would usually tell us that she's taken off or something, and it might not be before. She might call the couple of days into the day she took off and say, hey, I took off this week. Or she just might just show up here, at the house. So I did think that was a little unusual, excessively unusual. No, Tiffany is Tiffany. She might have gone to the phone to call me and just totally forgot, So it's nothing that would have shook me up and go, oh gosh, something's wrong.
Okay. Do you have any idea what she might have meant by saying that she needed to take, if she did say this, what she meant that she needed to take care of some things, that she'd actually have to take off work to do that? That sounds fairly serious to me.
Yeah. What we never could understand is, actually, to be honest with you, Ed, I would like to hear more about that conversation and to the person that she told that to. I don't know.
Fair enough.
I really don't.
Okay, we'll just leave it at that for now. I totally understand, and listeners will understand why Cindy is saying this in a moment. But she even left work early that day on August 12th, didn't she? She didn't even stay till the end of work.
Yeah, she did. Not very much early, but she did. Well, that depends. Some days they went into the nights working on these sets. Depends on the production and when it was due. And then sometimes she was done exactly on time. So yes, she did. She left a little early.
All right. And so, like you said, there is some sort of proof that after she left work, maybe just a few minutes early, she came home. There's seemingly somebody on her computer doing something like 5:30. So you could kind of read that as she left work, went home. But then after that, like you said, we're not sure where she was between about 5:30 and then at 7:50 p.m. that evening. Her SUV is seen going through, I guess, some sort of toll booth or something like that where they take pictures of cars. And where is that vehicle headed?
That is going across the bridge. After you go across the 3 Mile Bridge through Gulf Breeze, you go across, I believe it's called the Bob Sykes Bridge now, but I'm not sure what it's called. They renamed it the toll bridge onto the beach, onto the island, the beach itself. And it takes a picture of the license plate of every vehicle, but it does not take a picture of the front of the car. It's just the license plate in the back is all it gets. And it doesn't get a picture of anyone or any more of the car than just that.
So, and of course, you didn't find out about this picture till several days later after a vehicle was found. And once again, we'll cover that as well. So we have maybe about 2 hours there where we just don't know where Tiffany was. Would you say that was common for Tiffany to go out to that area?
Tiffany loved the beach. She worked out there periodically, waitressing before she went to work full time at the college, and she just really she would ride her bike out to the beach. She would go swimming and then go to the showers and dress for work and go to her job. And she really did like the beach. She would go out there and sketch. She would sit out there and sketch. They spent a lot of time at Fort Pickens camping, and she was into the astrology and she was really a nature person.
Now, when she came home at maybe 5:30, 5:15, after she left work a little early, was her roommate Gary there or not?
Report says that Gary was there. He said that he was on the phone in his bedroom and did not hear her come in.
So he didn't hear. He heard the door at 5 a.m, but didn't hear the door at 5 p.m.
No. And I think what bothered me can I say what bothered me the most about that?
Sure, please.
In this house, this is an old Victorian home. Tiffany's bedroom, when you walked into the foyer, was the first room on the right, and when you opened her closet door, the top of her closet was totally out. About 2 foot of the board was out, and you could actually throw something over into the next bedroom, which was Gary's bedroom. And Tiffany's closet was so full of stuff that her door was not closed. Her door was, there was so much stuff when we went into her house and the police were there, and then we did go into her house. I did get to go in after the police went in briefly. The room was typically Tiffany's mess. It wasn't like somebody had ransacked it. It was Tiffany's mess. She had her certain clothes piled So the door was open. So it's not like the closet door was closed. So I really questioned as to why couldn't Gary hear that she was in the house? Because I could stand in that room, and the joke was, is somebody said, do you think she needs this? And they would toss it through the closet at me, and I'd look at it and say, yes, this is hers. This is not somebody else's, because they'd had so many roommates over the years that they went off and left things. I mean, furniture was left there, clothes, bicycle parts, you name it. These college kids that were bicyclers and working their way through college, you name it, they left it behind. And so we had to go through a lot of stuff to see if it was Tiffany's or not. And we could hear each other through the room. And I don't know. I just, the ceilings of this house are old and high. There's a lot of wood, a lot of echoing, a lot of noise. You know, I just don't see how she could have been in that room on that bed on that computer and him not hear her.
All right, the listener.
I just don't understand it.
Okay, the listeners will take note of that when we come back to talking about this a little later. So that August 12th, 2013, it goes by. When do you realize that something's not right?
Well, on August the 17th, my sister's 50th anniversary. Rodney's out of town, and I'm out shopping. I get home about 5 o'clock. Look at my phone, and I have a message from someone named Noelle Nichols on my Facebook page, a private message. And I open it up, and she tells me who she is and that I need to call her. They think Tiffany is missing. And so I put away my groceries, and I go over and I sit down and I call her. And she tells me that who she is, that she is Tiffany's roommate's daughter, and that actually that when Tiffany didn't come home Gary told Noelle that Tiffany didn't come home on Tuesday from work, and then he called Noelle on Wednesday and said that she hadn't been home yet. And Noelle told him that she needed to stay out of her business, that she didn't need a father, and he said he was concerned because she didn't come home. And then I believe it was on Friday or Saturday he called her again and told her that he still hadn't heard from Tiffany yet, and that the electricity had been turned off.
Okay, let's just do this real quick. August 12th, 2013 is what day of the week?
That is on a Monday.
That's a Monday. So he became concerned the next day in the evening when he thought that she should be coming home from work and did not.
Right.
Okay. And instead of calling...
He called Noelle on Wednesday.
Okay, Okay, and then she got a hold of you somehow through, I guess you said through Facebook.
She went through on Tiffany's Facebook friends and found my name and knew who I was, that I was her mom, and she private messaged me on Saturday, the 17th.
Okay, so about 5 days after Tiffany disappeared, we could say she disappeared on that Monday. 5 days later is when you got the word. In those 5 days, as you can remember back, and it's like 4.5 years since then now. Anything strange go on in those days? Anything that, is immediately you thought to, well, you know what? I hadn't heard from Tiffany. Anything that really struck you as odd over those days?
Actually, for a fleeting moment when I looked at my watch and I thought, I tried to call her immediately. I didn't get a panic feeling at first, but I did wonder, why was it Saturday night? She knew her dad was out of town and I hadn't heard from her, but then I still hadn't put off the fact that it was still early and she could show up, that if she were en route and she didn't have any minutes on her phone, which I never knew when it went to voicemail, whether that meant she was had it turned off or whether it was out of minutes. I never knew. So when she didn't answer her home phone, her landline, then I never really panicked at that moment, thinking maybe she was going to show up there tonight, show up here tonight or that night. So nothing that really struck me to send me into panic mode yet.
Now, would you say those are 5 days? And like you said, could you remember going that long without ever talking to her? 5 days.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Sometimes
so that's the reason.
Talk to her on Sunday, and then it would be the following either Friday or Saturday when we hear from Erseer.
Okay, so
unless
not
during the week
unusual.
something happened or she wanted to eat, like, if we were going to go down to eat Japanese food or something, we'd call her and see if she wanted to just meet us there after work and stuff. But we didn't have anything that week because her dad was going to be traveling.
So not unusual at all.
No,
Not really that unusual. You
no,
really had no reason. It wasn't like you spoke to Tiffany every day and then
sometimes
she
3 or 4 times a day, or 3 or 4 days in a row, and then sometimes just every week, and sometimes just 5 or 6 days. Like I said, we'd see her every weekend or talk to her every weekend. So during the week, it wasn't unusual since she had a work schedule and we did too.
So what'd you do? She tells you that Gary hasn't seen Tiffany. I'm guessing that you went over to Tiffany's place. And what'd you
No,
see? What'd you
no,
find?
no. What I did immediately, first of all, I didn't know Gary yet. Second of all, what I did is Noelle and I immediately went through the list of all of the friends that we both could find all of the phone numbers and information on. I gave her the names of the people I knew. She gave me the names that she knew. She took her list. I took my list. We started calling people or emailing them or messaging them, whichever way we could reach them by whatever. And it only took us like 30 minutes before we both came to the conclusion something was not right. Nobody had heard from her. So I didn't waste my time going to the house because I already knew she wasn't there. Gary had already called Noelle and told her that. So I called the police immediately.
You did. Okay. Well, that was very smart on your part. That was a very efficient thing to do, I think. So what did the police do?
Well, they sent out I live in the county, so the sheriff's department shows up with 3 of them. 3 sheriff's departments, 2 cars, 3 guys, I think it was. Show up about 7 o'clock that night, and they come in, we sit down at the table, and we start going over everything like I've told you exactly what Gary had said and all that, and then they start asking me to help them, and we all start calling hospitals, emergency rooms, and of course got nothing there because of HIPAA. So as it turned out, we ended up having to call the station, and somebody at the police station ended up having to call all those people. So I wasted all that time calling when I knew. I tried to tell him you can't ask if anyone's there because it's against HIPAA. So I had to have the police do that. So after we chased all that down and everything, and he took the report, he decided that he would leave. I think it was about 11 o'clock that night. One by one, they each left except the last one. And when he left, he walked me to the door, and he actually looked at me and said, Miss Daniels, she's 25 years old. She can walk off the face of the earth if she wants to. And I said, nobody walks off the face of the earth, and you better go file that report right now. And I said, have a nice night. So that was the end of it for that night.
Yeah. Okay, so police did show up, and you told them everything, and of course you told them about how you and Noelle, once again, Noelle is the roommate's daughter, called all these people, and all these people who usually saw Tiffany hadn't seen her, hadn't talked to her, nothing since that Monday, since August 12th. What happened next? Did you eventually go over to her place? Did you drive over there just to see, or what?
Well, Gary calls me on Sunday, and he wants to meet with me because the electricity's been turned off, and he doesn't know what to do. And I said to him, I will take the utility bills and pay them because he had already paid his rent when he moved in for the month. So I felt obligated to uphold Tiffany's end of the bargain. So at this point, I wasn't thinking Tiffany was missing. I was thinking that she had just gotten a crazy idea and gone off with someone, and that she'd be calling any day now. So I told him if he would meet me and bring me the bills, that I would take them and pay them and get the utilities turned right back on for him first thing Monday morning. So I met Gary Sunday, the 18th, up at Pine Forest in 9 Mile Road at 8 o'clock at night at a Starbucks to get the bills from him. And
how did that go?
Well, we sat there for a little bit. I felt like he wanted to tell me something, but he, other than finally saying that I got the bills from him, and I told him I was going to have it turned back on first thing in the morning. He tells me that he's already moved out. And so I took the bills, got the house key from him, and I got in my car and I left.
At this point, you still hadn't gone over to Tiffany's place to see if anything was missing. Just to be frank, if there was any sort of signs of violence or anything like that, you would hope that Gary would tell you that if he was totally innocent. But at this point, you still have not gone over to her place.
No, because he lived there. I thought he was living there, and he said he was living there, and I did not want to invade his privacy. Plus, I didn't have a key until I met with him to get in. I didn't have a key to Tiffany's house. We realized that we had changed the locks on her house for her, and we had never gotten a key for us. We had a key to begin with, but after that, we didn't have a key. So, I had not gone over there. So that the next following Monday morning, I got a call from the sheriff's department telling me that they would be sending over the case to the Pensacola Police Department because Tiffany was in the city, and that's when they asked me to meet them at the house. They wanted to know if I had a key and would I meet them at the house, and I said, yes, I think we need to go into the house now. Apparently, Gary's not living there, and I thought he was. So they met me, Detective Harnett, and I think his name was Detective Brown from the Sheriff's Department, met me at Tiffany's house on that following Monday, on the 19th.
Okay. Maybe we should just establish here, was this your house? Was this Tiffany's house? Did she buy it? Was she renting from somebody else? Who actually owned the house?
Her name is Sarah. I don't know Sarah's last name. And she's a landlord, very, very nice person.
Okay.
And she owns the house. Yes, I didn't know anything other than Sarah's first name at that time. Anything about Sarah, because when Tiffany moved in the house, Michael and Kyle had been living there for over a year, I'm pretty sure, and they had a really good rapport with Sarah, and she was really good to Tiffany. So, I didn't even know Sarah's last name at that time.
So Sarah actually owns the building and the property, but it was up to Tiffany, though, to actually find additional roommates if anybody moved out. It wasn't Sarah who then, once a roommate moved out, was looking for somebody. She actually thought that it was Tiffany's responsibility to do that?
Yes, Tiffany signed the lease, and whoever signed the lease was responsible for making sure that the rent was paid and that they had roommates taken care of. However, Tiffany, whoever signed the lease, was responsible for it. And it's really a 5-bedroom house. I think it was originally. I think they were only renting out. At one time, they had 4. There were 4 of them in there. I think before Tiffany moved in, and there was room for 4 roommates. But I think they ended up going down to figure out they only needed 3.
Thank you for clarifying that. I should have probably asked you that question earlier in this interview, so we perfectly understood what the living situation was and whose house it was and everything. Thank you for explaining that. I have one more question, though, about the electricity. My experience with electricity regarding getting it shut off is that generally electric companies are a little hesitant to go and just turn people's power off as soon as one bill isn't paid. In fact, I had an experience when I first moved to Florida that I had thought I'd set my billing up to be paid automatically, and somehow I messed it up, and they actually showed up to shut off my power one day when I was home. Luckily, I was here and could get it all straightened out, but that was like after 2 or 3 months after I moved here that they did that. So hearing that the power company shut the electricity off not shortly after Tiffany disappeared, does that mean like they missed one payment and already the power company was turning it off, or have you ever gotten to the bottom of that?
I believe I'm pretty sure I'm correct on this. Tiffany was having trouble getting the roommates. She had 2 young ladies living in there at one point. She was having trouble getting them to pay their part. They ended up moving out owing her money.
Okay.
And we had already given her money to pay one of the bills, but at this point Tiffany was very hesitant to tell us she needed help. She wanted to be independent, but she was still struggling with that. And she always wanted to do it right. Even if it wasn't going to turn out right, she still tried to do it right. So she was probably behind at least 2 months. We didn't even go look at the power bill. I have all the information, but we never really looked to see, because at that point it didn't really matter anymore. Right. We knew she obviously was behind on the power and the water, and she had taken off. That's what we think she had taken off that week to do, is to either talk to us about money or to figure out what she was going to do about that, because obviously she was in worse financial. I know the rent was paid, but I think she was in worse financial dire straits than she wanted to admit she was, and it was all over those roommates. And so, because we wanted Tiffany to move we wanted to put her in her own apartment. And forget these roommates and all this mess, and she didn't want to, and we struggled with that with her. We wanted her to, and then we didn't. Then we worried about her being alone. So we went back and forth. That was a constant thing, Ed, about trying to decide, let her stay on her own and keep struggling with these flipping roommates, or put her in an apartment and let her get on her own, but then she'll be alone. And that was a big struggle with her relationship with us, and what was going on in her life at that time was trying to decide what was the best living arrangements for her. If it were up to me, we just said, come home. But your children need to learn to grow and be independent, so that when you die, they're going to take care. I want to take my last breath knowing my kids can take care of themselves. And that was always our goal. And even with a child struggling, we still tried to maintain that integrity of that goal, so it would be good for them. Even if it was killing us on the inside, we still tried to do it.
All right. So what you're saying is the reason that the power might not have gotten paid is because Tiffany had expectations of these other two roommates, specifically these two girls who didn't, kind of just hung out there and never paid anything, and kind of Tiffany got stuck with the bill. Pretty much.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you for explaining that.
She was too good. She would not like to ask people for money.
Yeah.
She had an issue with going up to them and saying, look, you need to pay up. And we were always saying, do I need to go over and do it for you?
Okay.
So she was just too sweet. She was just too kind.
Let's talk about Tiffany's SUV. It was eventually found. How many days later was it found, and where was it found, and what can we say about that?
Okay. They found her car Tiffany was last seen on the 12th. We reported on the 17th. On the 20th, we got a call. One of Angela's, or Otis, Tiffany's sister's friend, who lives at the beach, was out there with her family jogging, because they're all runners from Running Wild. And they called Angela and said, I think we are standing here by what we are pretty sure is your sister's car. And we are at the entrance to Fort Pickens at the beach on the Gulf side. And so Angela was with me when we got the call. We were here in the house. She was calling other friends. We'd been on the phone for 2 days, calling people still to see if anybody else. We were reaching way out to see if anybody had heard from Tiffany. We were calling all family members and everything. And when we got that call, we jumped in the car. We told them, call the police. We jumped in the car and we started going that way. And the police called me and told me not to go anywhere, not to go out to the beach. And I said, that's too bad. I'm on my way. I got out there and there was a deputy standing there. So that was on Tuesday the 20th that we found the car. And they wouldn't let me touch the car. I looked in the front seat. They wouldn't let me open the door. I could see her purse. I could see her computer, her little tablet. I could see in the back before the sun went down, because her windows were tinted in the back. I could see what looked to be like some shoes, her work shoes, and possibly some water. And it looked like a jar of peanut butter which was not unusual. Tiffany always carried peanut butter and bread with her when she was working because that was what she liked to eat for lunch. She'd go out and sit on the tailgate of the car outside and eat. And that was it. They wouldn't let me do anything with the car, and they came and hauled the car away. The car didn't look like it had been sitting there that long because it wasn't covered. We'd had pretty bad weather that week, and it wasn't covered in what I would have thought would have been the sand and the salt water and everything if it had been sitting there that long. But I did not think at that point to look at the wheels to see if sand had built up on the wheels during the day, because the breeze blows and you can look at a vehicle on the beach and tell from what's on it and the way the sand is on the tires. I've since learned that helps you tell how long a car's been sitting there. And when they got out there, it was dark. They didn't take any pictures. They didn't do anything except hook it up and drag it clear across 2 bridges and to the police department. So to me, they roped her house off as a crime scene, and they cleared it with guns and dogs and everything else. They should have done her car the same way, but instead they hauled it across 2 bridges. And I feel like the evidence that we might have known that was on that car was highly contaminated. If there was anything on it.
Was it parked in a regular parking lot? Was it?
Yes. Yes, it was on the Gulf side, and that parking lot, there's a parking lot there. It's funny, it has an old name. They called it Chicken Bone Beach, and the last parking lot on the left side of Fort Pickens Road before you get into the gates of Fort Pickens. And there are bathrooms there and picnic tables, and you can actually walk onto Fort Pickens property from there.
Is that a place that you would say that Tiffany usually went? I mean, does it surprise you that her car was there?
No, because she loved Fort Pickens.
Okay. Now, we had already talked about earlier that there was a photo taken of her car going out there. That is not how the car was found. The car was found by friends of yours who knew her vehicle. It wasn't until afterwards that somebody, I guess, the police started going through all of the photos taken of cars going out to the beach that her photo was found. Is that how? Am I correct in saying
once
that?
They found yes. Once they found the car and they knew that she had crossed that bridge, they knew that they had to have had a picture unless she came from the Navarre side. If she had gone, you can go. If you go over to Pensacola Beach from Pensacola, normally the way you go with 3 Gulf Breeze across the 3-mile bridge and then across the final bridge over to the beach. But if you go through, you can go all the way down to Navarre and come up to the beach on the Navarre beach side. But that they ran it through the Pensacola side, and that's exactly where she entered it from, was on the Pensacola side.
All right. And what they eventually found, I mean, that must have been some work going through all those photos, but they found her SUV going through this toll booth or whatever it is at approximately 7:50 on August 12th, 2013,
yes.
The very same day that she disappeared. Is there any proof that the car got out there and then maybe went somewhere else and came back? Are we sure that that is the only photo taken of her SUV going out there?
No. In fact, since then, we've gone through several detectives on the case, but Captain Kelly ended up taking over the case a couple of years ago, and he himself found pictures that someone had sent in from the condo across the street, beside that parking lot, and across the street almost directly is another parking lot, and then a gigantic set of condos. And we canvassed. We had flyers out immediately, and that's how Tiffany's friends knew that that was her car, because we had circulated flyers out. Noelle and Terry had gotten together, and we had met at Sluggo's on that Monday and made flyers up. We were at the beach on that Wednesday passing them out also, but that's how they knew it was her. That's how they knew it was hers. But we canvassed those condos, and apparently someone in those condos took a picture of Tiffany's car which if it's correct where we got this, which I've not been able to get it, any of this, I understand now that there's a statute saying that I can obtain this from the police, but I didn't know that. They're stamped. The pictures are stamped, and it tells you the date and the time it was made, and these are 2 days apart, I think, and it's Tiffany's car in that parking lot. Someone actually took a picture of that parking lot, and there's that Tiffany's car.
And so do you know what day this was?
No, I just know that Captain Kelly had sent the pictures over at one time, and we were trying to get confirmation as to where these pictures came from, and I guess they never did. I don't have the means to do it. They did, but I never got it. These are things that are on my list to ask. What happened, and why don't I have this information?
Do you believe that those pictures, wherever Tiffany's car is parked, is that where it was eventually found, or was it moved?
No. It looks to me like we couldn't see the pictures. We could only see light images of them because there was no way for him to get a print out of these pictures because of where they were found or something. I'm not sure, Ed, what the story was. It looked to me like the car was sitting in the same exact spot. And we also had a lady had called, one of the leads, and she's one of the only leads that I can't find the other phone number for, because I have two ladies that called me from the beach that week that got a hold of me, and both of them thought they had sighted Tiffany. One of them was behind her car. She was positive it was her car because they were visiting, and they noticed that people in Florida have license plates with initials on them, and that those initials sometimes stand for a saying or a name or something. So they had been laughing and identifying all the ones that were pretty obvious, and then they got behind Tiffany's, and they couldn't figure out what this ECB OR was. They couldn't figure it out, so they were trying to come up with words and everything. And then she sees the news, and she sees Tiffany's car, and she goes, I was behind that car. So she called, and I sent her to the police. I don't know whatever happened to that lead with them, but she could have helped us set a time limit. To me, my husband and I think that sometime between the 12th and before the 17th that car was moving on the beach. For some reason, we just feel like it was still moving because this woman followed it, and she was there. I think the week that she said was that whole week she was there, and she was going to tell the police all about what day it was. So we feel, and from what I remember of the car, I feel like the car might have been there maybe 2 or 3 days. I don't think I didn't feel like the car had been sitting there the whole time. It did not look like it, a car that had been sitting on the beach. You know, you live on the beach area.
I do.
What your car looks like if you sit it out in the weather, especially since the week of, I think it was the week of the 18th, or right before that was a big storm out there. You can go back and look if you Google it and see. I've Googled so much and lost so much and forgot so much. I'm so sorry. We feel like that storm would definitely have affected that vehicle had it been sitting in that spot that whole time. That's a long time from the 12th to the 20th to sit in a parking lot. And also the police say that the sheriff's department claimed that every night they clear those parking lots. And if there's a car left, they run the license tag because they want to identify whether that person is still on the beach or if they've been left out there.
Sure.
A deputy said that he remembers Tiffany's car being on his tape, but because he didn't have an alert at that time, he erased the tape. Well, didn't erase it, he just kept taping over it. There was no reason to hit the button to take a picture of it. So I do not feel like that the car was sitting there the whole time, but I feel like it was sitting there more than 2 or 3 days.
So what we're saying to the listeners is that we should not come to the automatic conclusion that because Tiffany's car, there was a picture taken of it going out there on the 12th, that it was stationary out there from the 12th to the 20th. That it could have been driven around out there where no photos would have been able to have been taken of it.
Mm-hmm. That's what we're thinking, because
Okay.
it did not show evidence that it had been there in the weather that long in that one spot.
I guess there wasn't anything unusual about the car, but this is kind of a more recent development, and this is something that happened after you did the disappeared episode. Is that maybe most people don't realize that you didn't even get to look inside the vehicle until very recently. In fact, the end of 2017, from 2013 until within the last 4 months, what was inside it was kind of a mystery to you. Um, what did you see when you finally did get to look in the car, when the police finally allow you to look inside her vehicle?
Well, the first thing that caught our eye was that they had said that her bike was in the car. And I guess I'm naive. I automatically thought that she had picked up the bike and set it in the back, then closed it down, because they kept saying there were sand on the tires, but there was no sand in the floorboard. So they don't feel like when the bike was put in the car that person got in the car also, because there would have been sand in the floorboard. So we had this vision of the bike there. We just had a whole different vision of the car. And when he opened up the car and let us look in it, her bike was in pieces. Yeah, it was in the car all right, but it was in pieces, which Rodney explained to me, without her laying down the back seat, she would have had to take it apart, because normally I have a Toyota 4Runner just like it, only newer, and she put hers numerous times in the back of my vehicle all in one piece. So my idea of what the car had in it and what it really had in it was two different things, because her bicycle was in multiple pieces, like she had taken it apart, which I guess to Tiffany was nothing, because she biked all the time, so she's very familiar with them. There was the jar of peanut butter. There was some things that I had seen through the window before briefly when I was able to see, but basically it was the shape the bike was in that was astounding to me, and it made me think, I'm not so sure that Tiffany really biked like we had thought. She might have gone for a bike ride out there, but now I'm not so sure that she even had that bike out, or if she did, because it was in pieces. And I was just like, everybody kept brushing that off and saying, well, they have to take it apart, and that's typical, bikers do that, but it didn't look like that to me. That's not the way I envisioned it with Tiffany. I didn't envision Tiffany taking the time to take it apart and do that if she had been for a ride, especially if she was coming back to her car like they were trying to indicate, and she didn't get in the car. To me, she would have just put the bike in the car and closed the door. She wouldn't have taken the time to disassemble it. So I'm just still questioning the fact that the bike was taken apart.
All right, what do you mean by for all the non-cyclists out there, what do you mean that it was taken apart?
Like the wheels were off of it and the handlebars, it was disassembled. You would have to take it out and put it back together and put the wheels on it. She had taken the wheels off of it, and I think the handlebars were off too, to get it in the back of the car. And that's just, I don't know, maybe you know something about it, but that just looked odd to me, that the bike was taken totally apart and put in the back of the car.
Had you ever seen Tiffany take apart the bike? All the years that you knew her and her riding bikes, had you ever seen her take a bike apart before?
No. I've seen her with the bike parts all strolled all over the porch and them working on them before a race and things like that. But every time I picked Tiffany up and she was with me, she didn't take her bike apart. She just picked it up and we put it in the back of my Toyota 4Runner with the seat down and went on about our business. And she, and anytime I took her anywhere with her bike, she put it whole in the back of my car too. No, I've never seen her do it. I know she worked on them with her friends, but not, when she was riding like that, that was not something I just thought about. Of course, that could be me not knowing anything about cycling.
Do you think that she had to take it apart because that's the only way it would fit in her vehicle?
Probably that's what everybody's saying it is, which makes me think that she didn't really go out there to bike for sure. I just don't feel like, I don't know why, I just have this weird feeling that it's not what I thought she went out there for, to bike or anything. I thought maybe she did bicycle when she was out there, but I just don't feel like Tiffany did. I want to know, that's another thing I want to find out, is were there fingerprints on the bicycle?
All right, let's just go through this then. Let's go back to the day that she disappeared. So she goes out there. If we're to believe, now keep in mind, there is no photography, any video showing that she's driving that vehicle at 7:50 on August 12th. All we have is a picture of her license plate. But let's say that it was her at the wheel. She drives out there. You are under the belief possibly that she went out there to maybe do a little bike riding, be getting close to dark, but I think that she had a headlight on her bike. She could have done that, right?
Yeah, she could have. It was one of the possibilities we mulled over as to why she went out there at that time of night.
So, but you're saying now, looking at the bike, once again, all these years later, 4.5 years later, that maybe seeing that bike with the wheels unattached kind of leads you maybe possibly in a different direction. Possibly.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
It's just not what I thought I would find for the scenario that was presented to me, that she put the bike in the back of the car and then got in somebody else's car and left.
Okay.
But she would have had to take a lot more time. It wouldn't have just been that simple as throwing the bike in the back of the car. And if you took it apart, wouldn't it seems to me like those sands would have come off the wheels if you were taking it apart? So I'm still confused about what's with the sand on the wheels. Why did that police keep saying there was sand on the wheels? There was no sand on the wheels when we looked at it in the car this time, but
hard to say. After 4.5 years, it's hard to say. Maybe the sand, because it would be in the car, it'd be getting hot in that car, that it would dry up so much that the rubber starts to go bad, and then the sand kind of just falls off of the rubber.
Well, that's true. However, they kept saying that was a clue to them for some reason, that the sand was on the tires. So they think she definitely had the bike out of the car. So my question to the viewers is, if you bike, do you all know? Like when you take your bike apart and you put it in the back of your car, does the sand stay on wheel? I'm not from.
If the sand's wet, if it's damp, it could be. Sure. If the sand is damp, if it's dry, then probably not.
I'm trying to get this visual in my head of what the scenario's been set for us, and there's just a lot of questions there.
Was there any of her art in her car?
Yes, there was. There were 3 pieces in her car.
And would you say that it was normal for her to carry around art in her car? And did this look like pieces of work that were finished, half finished? What do you think?
One of these was a very large piece that I had never seen. And no, these were finished pieces. And I have a theory on this.
Well, let's just stick to the facts right at this second, if we could.
Right.
Okay. There was some art in her car. Once again, did she generally drive around in her car with art in the car?
Only if she was transporting it back and forth to her job. If it was part of the set, or she was taking it. If she had finished it at work, she worked on a lot of her artwork while she was in between working on sets and stuff. And before she graduated from UWF, she was still very much involved in the art department out there. So she worked on pieces out there too for her portfolio. So those instances she would be, but just to drive around with it in her car all the time, no.
Regarding her artwork, being that, eventually you did go into her house, you saw the work, what she was working on. Would you say, in your opinion, that all of her artwork has been accounted for?
Wow, I couldn't say, because she was constantly doing pieces and bringing pieces that she had up at the theater back home. Some of the sets, she even brought some of the sets home that she did on large scales, great big boards and stuff. Instead of destroying them or throwing them away or painting over them, some of those she brought home, they gave to her. So there'd be no way of knowing.
Overall, between her car, her house, and where she was living, it wasn't technically her house, but everything that you know about your daughter, besides her, is there anything else missing besides her?
Not that we know of.
Okay. Any money, of course, her cell phone. I think you found that even though it wasn't working, but you said her purse was in the car. Was her ID in the car?
Yes. her license were in the car. We found all of her pertinent identification cards and credit cards that she had extra, and the police found the others that she had on her. And all of that all that's been accounted for.
Were there any shoes in the car? Do you think that maybe if she had like
Yes.
flip-flop on, would she like change shoes to go biking, or all of her shoes accounted for? Do you know?
Well, her work boots were in the car. Not sure about what she would have had to put on. She was a barefoot person and a sandal person. So I know the shoes that I've given her, we wore the same size, so she had a lot of my shoes. But no, I couldn't tell you if she had others. No.
Okay. Any forensics done on the vehicle to your knowledge? Any fingerprints? I mean, we talked about the sand on the tires, but actual like fingerprints, anything like that done on the vehicle after they took it away?
And they say they have accounted for all but 2 fingerprints on the door handle on the driver's side and one on the steering wheel that they could not match with anyone that had been in the car, and they ran it through the database and nothing came up, which just means that that person has not been arrested or fingerprinted. Doesn't mean that they're not a bad person or anything, just doesn't mean they've been caught. So there's no record of them in any database for their fingerprints. Now, I will say this, when I talked with the detective last, they were possibly going to rerun some of those fingerprints, but I don't know. That is on my list of them to do, is rerun those fingerprints again.
Do you know of anybody besides Tiffany who ever drove her vehicle?
No.
Okay.
Tiffany loved her vehicle. She was so ecstatic over having that car that she actually slept in it the first night we gave it to her. She was so happy with that type of car, and the girl that had owned that car before was an artist, and she had spilled some paint in the back of it, so Tiffany felt like that car was destined for her.
Huh.
She was very protective of that car and very proud of it. Her landlord, Sarah, told us how funny she was when she brought it home. Sarah went over to get the rent, and Tiffany was just on cloud 9, and she told Sarah, I slept on it last night. I couldn't believe I have it.
That's a good story.
So, no.
So we already talked about the boyfriend. What did he have to say? I'm sure the police probably tracked him down, but he seems to have a good alibi. By the time that Tiffany disappeared, he was in Texas, but did he say anything helpful at all regarding this?
He was the first person Tiffany's dad called. I mean, when Tiffany's dad was out of town, and it took him 2 days to get a flight home, and the first thing, before he ever even hung up, he was already calling Gray, and he was rolling Gray over the coals, wanting to ask him every detail there was, and he was satisfied that Gray absolutely had no idea, and because Rodney kept saying, I just know she left and she changed her mind and she's gone to be with Gray. And he had Gray on a leash for 3 days. He said, if it takes her 3 days, he goes, I mean it. And he called Gray every day. I know just about every day. But no, he was genuinely shocked, or he appeared to be. They fingerprinted, they did his phone, they did all of those things, and he was, I can say that I feel like he was, bless his heart, was in shock, because it's like we lost contact with him because he was so devastated. He said he couldn't hardly even talk about it. And so unfortunately we've lost contact with him. But no, Gray would not be on my list of anyone that I would raise a red flag. I could be totally off, but as my mother's instinct, he's just not raising a red flag for anything.
Okay, and most importantly, on August 12th, he was in Texas. He had already...
Yeah, yes. Okay. And he went down voluntarily to the Austin Police Department, and was fingerprinted and everything, and turned his cell phone over to him, and the Austin police were satisfied with it, and so were our detectives apparently satisfied with it.
So the boyfriend has a pretty solid alibi. Maybe if he was still living um, where he had been when he was dating Tiffany, he might be a better suspect. But being that he's a few states away and seems like a good guy, not high on your list of anybody who would have wanted Tiffany to disappear. Did the police talk to the roommate, Gary?
Yes, they did.
And what did you find out about that? I know you weren't there for the questioning, but have you heard anything about it? Did anything suspicious come out of it?
I guess it was still the same, that I really just don't understand how long. I'd like to know how long he was on the phone, because that would kind of give us an idea how long Tiffany was home. Because they had evidence she was home, but they didn't know exactly how long she stayed there, because there was still a question about picking up a box of clothes that she might have left at Gray's former residence. So we were trying to establish a timeline, and I was just wondering if they had ever asked Gary how long he was on that phone call that he supposedly was on when Tiffany came home. And maybe if we knew that, then we would know how long she was home. And if when she left the house, was there a gap between the time that she left the house and actually went across the bridge? Was there time for her to have gone anywhere else? And that would have helped me know whether I really thought it was Tiffany driving that car or not across the bridge. So I really, that's the one thing that they never said. I thought that was kind of odd. I never heard them if they said anything about that or not.
Now, you had already mentioned earlier in this interview about how you thought it was a little weird that if Tiffany did come home, he claims he never heard her, and you just find that maybe a little hard to believe, given the way that house was, and there was like this opening in the closet that you could easily hear through, and if not see through. But that's what Gary said. To your knowledge, has he ever offered up an alibi for, let's say, 8 o'clock that night when Tiffany's vehicle was going out to the beach?
I never talked to him after that night. I talked to him the next morning briefly. He called me, and I told him that the detectives were definitely filing a report, and I had a new person that was working on it. And he asked me, had they arrested anyone yet? And I said, for what? I didn't know there was a crime. And he said, well, I just wondered. And that was the end of the last time I talked to Gary. He showed up for several of the searches, and of course, Noelle was there too. And we did some of the stuff out of her studio, but that really was the last time I talked to Gary.
And how long ago was that?
That was right after Tiffany went missing.
So for almost 4.
He came up for that, and he got transferred. He took a job and moved to Italy. Sometime within the next 8 or 9 months, I think it was, he moved to Italy and took a job with civil service there. So I haven't seen or talked to him anymore since then.
And he is still in Europe?
Yes.
Okay. So he's kind of, even if the police wanted to talk to him, it'd be a little tough now.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
To your knowledge...
Noelle knows where he is, but I don't know. Okay. I don't have any idea.
Do you have any knowledge as to whether his statements have ever contradicted themselves? He said one thing and then said another to somebody else in the last 4.5 years about the disappearance of Tiffany.
We had heard, but it was not to our faces, but someone had said, they repeated the story that he had said about he was not home, and that he was not home at that time, yet he had told the police he was, but we've never gotten to talk to him to ask him about that complete story. So all I have is just what the rumor was. I can't confirm it until I know when Gary comes home. I'm going to have a lot of questions. I want to ask him a lot of things, but a lot of gaps I didn't get to find out about, and he's the only one that would know. So Other than that, no, I don't know.
And we do have to reiterate that his daughter was on the Disappeared episode. And once again, and the listeners know how I feel about the show Disappeared. I think it does generally a good service getting missing persons cases out there. But on the other hand, sometimes it leaves very important facts out of the stories, and also sometimes interviews people who maybe shouldn't be interviewed. And I have to tell you that it seems weird to me that they would interview the daughter of the roommate of Tiffany when it could be seen in some respects that Gary should still continue to be a person of interest to be talked to a little bit more about Tiffany's disappearance. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, there was a lot. That's not the only area, but I agree with you. It probably wasn't the best idea to have had that interview like that. And you're right, it does. It makes it hard. Gary had a lot of threats made against him. Apparently, Noel said on his Facebook account, and he had to close it down after the Disappeared episode showed. And I had warned Noel when they did it that the public were going to question why a 50-something-year-old man would want to live with a girl half his age, and especially once they find out he's moved to Italy, it's going to make him look suspicious whether he is or not. And that there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I gave her the chance to back out, and it was a tough time between us at that point. I'm wanting to get the truth out there, and of course I know Noelle's feeling protective of her dad, and that's a tough situation there. And we were deeply in debt to Noelle for everything she's done, so we certainly wouldn't do anything to personally cause her damage or anything. But we knew that once that story got out, it was going to cause questions and suspicions, and we done everything we could to warn her of that and help her get through that. So it's made for a tough situation.
Now, before we get into this next person, I want to ask you something. Once again, it's been 4.5 years since your daughter disappeared. Any of her friends, any other people who worked with her at this theater, or Gary, or her boyfriend, Gray, did anybody ever say to you, you know what, Tiffany told me she was going to be taking off some days from work?
No.
She never said that to anybody? To your knowledge?
That we know of, to my knowledge.
Okay.
Other than Bob. Other than her boss. Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
All right. And we're going to talk about him right now. And I want listeners to remember that. We're not going to use his last name. Okay. We're not going to do that. I think Gary's name being out there, I think they used his full name in the Disappeared episode. It's not so big of a deal. But we're just going to use Bob's first name if we could. He was her mentor. He was, I guess, her supervisor at the theater. How long had Tiffany and Bob known each other? Had you ever met him before Tiffany disappeared? And what did Tiffany have to say about him? What did you think about him? Before Tiffany disappeared, just set that relationship up if you could.
Well, no, we never met him. We knew of him because Tiffany would, she'd run by things with us on the weekends, like, I'm thinking about doing this, or I might want to do this. And we would give her our opinion, and she would always chime in with, well, Bob said, and I asked Bob about it, and Bob told me. So after a while, we finally realized that Bob was not one of her co-workers, but her boss. And so we knew that Tiffany was confiding in him because it came up in a lot of our conversations, especially when it came time for Gray to leave. But we never met him, didn't know anything about him other than that we knew that she valued his opinion a lot.
And how long do you think that Tiffany and Bob knew each other before she disappeared?
I believe, I know it's been over a year, but she and Kyle and Michael all worked at the same time for Bob, and I know she had worked part-time for him before she went full-time, so I know it was over a year.
When did you find out that Tiffany had told him that she said that she was going to be taken off a few days, or maybe that next week, maybe the rest of the week? She disappeared on a Monday, maybe the rest of the week, Tuesday through Friday. How did you find that out? When did you find that out? Who told you that? Do you remember?
Yes, on the 17th when I reported Tiffany missing, I looked him up on Facebook to get in touch with him because, being her boss, I needed to find out if she had sent anything to him or if he knew where she was.
Okay.
And I messaged him on Facebook and told him that nobody had seen or heard from Tiffany, and that's when he told me on a message that she had said she was going to take off for a few days, and that she might not have gasoline money. And he said, and that was the end of it.
Would you, in your opinion, say that he sounded concerned? Did he say that what she told me she was going to be doing this on those days off, anything like that? Or was it a very quick conversation?
It was a quick message. And at that point, I had no reason to really jump back on him for any reason, because at this point, you got to remember, I still didn't think Tiffany was missing.
Mm-hmm.
I just kept thinking she just had gone with someone. And now that Bob had said she had told him she was going to take off, it made me think, okay, she has gone with someone. So at this point, nothing raised a red flag right yet then.
Okay. So that's how you found out. He specifically told you that. Do you know if the police ever talked to him in regards to Tiffany's disappearance? Did they ever go over there, talk to him, just to get his rundown of what happened that day, being that she saw him, she was at work, and then she left a few minutes early? Do you know if the police ever talked to him?
They did. I think it took them a day or so to catch up with him. Bob kind of had a reputation of being anti-police, so they were not greeted well, is what my detective told me, and they really dismissed it as not too much. He didn't have too much to tell them other than exactly what he had told me. And at this point, I don't think anybody's looking at, well, okay, this is the last person that saw her and talked to her, because I don't think anybody at this point still was taking it serious that Tiffany was disappeared and missing, as in missing, not just gone off with someone. I think at this point the police were still thinking she's 25, she's just gone somewhere, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm still holding it together thinking she's going to show up any day now.
Now, Tiffany, like you said, Tiffany and the conversations you would have with her, she would mention Bob quite a bit. Bob said this, Bob said that, and I guess maybe that's not too crazy, being that he's her supervisor there. He's in the arts community. She goes to him for advice. What did he say to her about going to Austin with Gray?
That was probably that was the last and biggest throwdown we had over it. After I investigated into Austin's theaters and things like that, and saw that there was a lot of opportunities, a lot more job openings and stuff that Tiffany could suit into, plus get her art on display down at the public place that they have down. And we were really talking. I was getting excited. And Rodney was kind of getting excited too, because he's from Texas and he's got a lot of family up that way. So we were thinking, we've got family up there that can look after her too. So we were getting excited. But Bob told her Austin was not the place to go, that she needed to stay here in Pensacola, and that he would help her sell her artwork.
Now, if the listeners don't know, if I may, if the listeners don't know, now I know Pensacola a little bit, but I think I know Austin. I've never been there, but I know it a little bit better. Austin, Texas has a thriving arts community. Music, sculpture, painting, everything else in Texas. a lot bigger than Pensacola. And of course, Austin is a much bigger city than Pensacola is. And here, the supervisor of Tiffany, who's in the arts, is telling her that Pensacola would be a better place to be than Austin if you're an artist.
Yeah. And my question was this. I thought he was the technical director. I know that they know a lot, but that's art. That unless he's an artist on the side or he's art, I just couldn't understand what a technical director would know about that side of the arts unless he really was into it. And why would he be advising her on that unless he was an artist? So I just flat out asked her, is he an artist? Did he do something in the art community I don't know about? Like, the teacher that she had, Miss Mackey, is a countess, and she's well known in this town. And the other art people that we had her associated with are well known. Did I miss this guy? Do I not know who he is because he's great and he knows what to do about artwork? And
so would you say, in your opinion, is it your opinion that the reason that Tiffany didn't go to Austin with Gray is because Bob told her not to?
I hate to say it, but yes. We feel like that was she was scared to leave home. We understood that. But she was, I just feel like that she was made to believe that he was going to help her sell her artwork here and help her do whatever she wanted to do to help with her artwork. And we just believed that he was a big influence on her.
To your knowledge, at any time before she disappeared, had Bob ever helped her sell her art? To your knowledge?
Not that I know. Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Now this is something, once again, not in the disappeared episode, obviously, but this is something that popped up during the filming of the disappeared episode. In something that one of the production assistants said about Bob, who knew him. Tell the listeners set that all up for the listeners. Tell them what happened.
Well, our crew came. 3 were from New York. Well, actually, 2 were from New York. 1 was from California. And then their assistants, which were the audio and what you call the audio grip, which is the person that helps with the everything. They help set up the audio equipment and the lighting stuff and everything. So they were local. So I had a total of 5 crew members here. And they literally just take over your house. And the young lady was from this area, had gone to school here, knew some of the same things about Pensacola and people that we did, and she was helping. And the conversation off camera led to Bob, and we were talking, and out of the clear blue sky, she pipes up. She goes, "Oh, everybody knows about Bob. He's well known in the community of the college of." If you know what I mean, with the students and the girls. And we all just looked at her like, what?
Did you take that to mean Did you take that to mean that Bob, maybe, even though I believe he is married, I don't know if has any children, but at least he was married at the time in 2013, that maybe once in a while he might have had a dalliance with a student or 2?
That's exactly where my mind went, and everyone in the room's mind went.
To your knowledge, I have to ask this, and it's coming, and we've already talked about this. Is there any proof that maybe Bob and Tiffany had something going on, or at least Bob wanted to have something going on with Tiffany?
Well, Tiffany did confide in one of her sisters that she thought a lot about Bob, and that she kind of indicated to her sister that there might have been an occasion or 2 where her and Bob were pretty close.
And who did she confide this? She confided into your other daughter about this?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, I know this probably would be a very awkward conversation, but has anybody ever mentioned this to Gray, her actual boyfriend at the time?
No. Mm-mm.
All right. So if he's
wanted
listening,
to, didn't know how far to go with it, didn't know. Kind of was hoping that was before her and Gray, because she had been working with Bob for quite some time when she met Grace. So,
and once again, nobody that you've been able to find in the last 4.5 years, and the police have been able to find, nobody has ever said to them, yes, Tiffany was planning on taking off the rest of the week. The only person that has ever uttered those words is Bob.
Exactly, to my knowledge. And if she did say it to someone, they have not come forward.
Now, something also interesting about the disappeared episode is that the school where Tiffany was working and where Bob works disappeared, wanted to film on the campus. What happened?
They wouldn't let them. Disappeared is NBC, Peacock Production, of course, contacted them, told them what they were doing, and understand they went all over this town to every place that's mentioned in that film, including Santa Rosa Island. They must get permission in writing to do this, whether it comes from the governor or the mayor or whoever, which it's kind of odd when we found out how many people they had to go through on some things because we thought the beach is public. No, I'm sorry, but believe it or not, you can't. You know this, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow. So, but when it came to Pensacola State College, they were denied. They said that Tiffany's case gave them bad publicity. And I said, wait 1 second. The bad publicity did not happen. Nothing was really ever mentioned when Tiffany disappeared other than she was as you can see in the papers or articles and go back and see, that she was a student there. They didn't say one bad thing about the college. What happened is 2 weeks after Tiffany disappeared, a young man who, for his second time, decided to go into the library and relieve himself of seminal fluid everywhere in public for his second time, was caught this time and arrested. And then a week later, something else happens out there. Someone gets killed. That's where the bad publicity came from, not my daughter. My daughter's case never brought anything bad to light. I never even told them about the lack of lighting or security at the college. We never went there with that. Not one time. Not once. So that's where the bad publicity came from. But they wouldn't let them on the campus. They told them that none of us were welcome on the campus.
Do you at any time, did you suspect that maybe Bob might have been behind them not doing any filming on campus?
You know, at this point, now I am. At that time, I was like, huh? You know, really? It sounded more to me like someone had something to hide, or it's like they didn't want people there talking to anyone, which, to my knowledge, I don't even know how many students. Everyone that saw Tiffany that day should have been interviewed. Don't just go there and interview them. Call them down to the station and interview them. I don't care. They need to be professionally interviewed. Bob was the last person, Ed, to see Tiffany alive, unless someone's lying. In between that house and Gary, those are the only two people that have been in that window of time with her. Who, you know, that's who I would have been looking at right away. The last person to see her alive, he should have given them a description of what she had on. To this day, we don't have a description of what Tiffany had on. Why? Where is that? Is that not part of a routine investigation? Is what the person had on? Isn't that what you see? You know, I mean, on photo, you know, wearing this and wearing that. These are questions, and I'm like, what happened here? To me, I would have started there and worked my way down the ladder. But now I've learned this in 4.5 years. This has been my life. Investigative reporting, I guess. I don't know, but this is just, to me, common knowledge.
Yeah. All right. So we have Bob, once again, a mentor. Maybe seems like he gave Tiffany some, not the smartest advice, at least. And, you know, and I'm a guy who's been in the arts, in entertainment, worked in Las Vegas in entertainment. Even people in Las Vegas know that Austin is a
great place for the arts. Here he is in Pensacola, Florida, telling Tiffany not to go to Texas. Maybe he had a personal interest in doing that. She confides to her sister that maybe she and Bob had something going on. And on top of that, on top of everything else, a girl who went to that college, who knew Bob, that worked on the Disappeared episode, said that he had kind of a reputation. So that all has to be, I think, considered on top of anything else we want to think about regarding this case. There is one more topic here regarding any sort of suspects or anything like the person of interest or maybe people in Tiffany's orbit. And this is a homeless person out at the beach. There was a guy with red shorts and no shirt. What is that entire story, if you can explain it to the listeners?
There was a young lady who talked to the police and class kids when Tiffany disappeared. She had a time frame of where she had gone out to Fort Pickens right after it had reopened up, because there were several days it was closed due to weather. And she said when she was coming out of Fort Pickens, I believe she said coming out, there was a man on the side of the road off in this area that was roped off for protected wildlife area, or whatever that's called. They have areas, as you know, that's protected and you cannot walk on them or anything. And it's out at Fort Pickens, has a lot with the sea oats and stuff. And she said he had the back of the SUV open and he was shaking a blanket and all he had on was red shorts. And she said that she was pretty sure it was a gray SUV and that it looked just like the one in the picture. And she had made a comment. You could see where we had looked up to see how credible she was. We had looked up her Facebook comments to a friend, and sure enough, there was a conversation with her on her friend on that day saying, I wonder, what does he know he's in a protected area? He's not supposed to be over on the sand like that. And that's what made her look, because he was in an area. She's one of those people that really pays attention to that and teaches her kids eco stuff. And her and her daughter were like really upset that he was over there where the sea turtles and all the sea oats were, and he wasn't supposed to be there. So she didn't think anything about it until she saw Tiffany's poster, flyer up with the car. And when she saw that, then that's when she called the police and told them. Well, somehow or another, that lead got pushed to the side, and 2 years goes by, and she calls me or messaged me on Tiffany's page after 2 years and tells me that she just can't dismiss the fact that she hasn't seen, or no one's ever called her and asked her about her seeing that guy to see if that might have been Tiffany's car at that time. And so when they went back over their notes, come to find out, class kids had also interviewed another person up by the condo that had seen a guy in red shorts standing by a car that looked like Tiffany's also in that parking lot. So we had two people at two different times see Tiffany's car in two different places with a guy with, or what they think is allegedly Tiffany's car, in two different places, both with the same description of the men. So it was kind of we didn't think it was much of a coincidence that would have happened. So they did their best to follow up on the lead, but never could get anything to help them. I mean, nobody came forward saying, yes, they remember the guy in the red shorts, except those two people. And, so that was the end of that.
Was there a story, though, connected to all this regarding a woman who was sketching? And did they think maybe that could have been Tiffany?
There was another person that said that they notified me that they were out there and they saw a girl sketching, and that a homeless guy that had been hanging out in the area and everybody knew him had been out there at the same time, and that they had called the police to run him away, and he was well known and everything, and that they had called the police and said that there was a woman out there sketching by herself and this guy was out there walking around. The police said they had no record of anything like that, and the guy has not been able to be found out at Pensacola Beach. And the young lady said that she believes that he's moved down to Navarre. and that he is could be questioned down there. So I'm not sure if there was any officers out to follow up on that. I personally couldn't find him. I have several people out with class kids that continue to look around for this guy when they're out in that area, but we so far have not found him.
And being that we mentioned the artwork in Tiffany's vehicle that you eventually did see, was there any kind of what you might call sketchings in her car, or was it just paintings, would you say?
No, they were artwork. And one of the first things, Noel and I went through the house and we looked at all the artwork, and we both tried to think of anything. And when Gary was saying that Tiffany was going in and out of the house, our conclusion, Bob, was that Tiffany was loading up artwork in her car that morning, because there was nothing else in her car, no tents, no nothing, like she wasn't loading up suitcases or anything. But one of these pieces of art is large. It would have taken her 2 trips to carry it out one at a time. And I believe that Tiffany had that artwork in her car because she was taking that artwork to sell it. Now, whether she was going to the beach that night to sell it or not, but my second theory and thought is that Tiffany had that artwork because she had just told me that Bob had told her he was going to help her sell the artwork. She's taking off a week, so maybe she's going to start selling her artwork. So she loads it up into the car that morning. My only question is, I never got to go to her locker at the college, so I don't know if she had any other artwork there. Were these the only pieces? Did she find someone there? Did someone meet her to buy this artwork? Was that the only 2 pieces? Why would you go with 2 or 3 pieces? That's not a lot. 2 small ones and 1 large one. Those are just questions that we don't know about that artwork. I just feel like Tiffany had that artwork in her car because she was going to sell it.
Okay, I think that's a reasonable thought. Let's go. There have been several sightings. None of them can be confirmed, but I want to talk about one in particular. This is one that happened at a restaurant or something. How long was this after Tiffany disappeared? And you happen to kind of know the waitress involved. Why don't you tell the listeners about that?
Okay. We had set up an anonymous tip line, and in January of 2014, on that anonymous tip line, we received a tip that said that this person worked at Mr. Ed's over in Metairie, and that she had a woman with 2 young girls come in to eat, and she waited on them. And that what struck her odd was that the 2 girls, they never looked up. The woman was Hispanic. The 2 girls had their clothes pulled down over their hands. And she said when the other girl looked up to ask her a question about some food, that she thought it was Tiffany. She said she looked just like Tiffany, and that she took the order, went back, came back, and the young girl asked her a couple of questions, and she said, you look just like that girl that's missing in Pensacola. And when the waitress came back to bring them their food, they got their food, and they asked for bags to go, and they left. So I knew one person that I used to work with here in Pensacola that was really good friends of mine, and she lived in New Orleans. And I wasn't sure where she lived, but I thought, let me call her and see what she knows about Mr. Ed's. So I picked up the phone and I called Lisa, and I asked her, I said, Lisa, what do you know about Mr. Ed's restaurant in Metairie? She goes, I know Bonnie, my sister-in-law, works there. And she said, I think that, did she get a hold of you? And I said, she said, she thinks she saw Tiffany in the restaurant, but that was in December. Now in December the 6th, or no, December the 10th, I think it was, December the 7th it was when she saw them. And she didn't send the tip to us on the anonymous line until January the 6th of 2014. So when I called the restaurant and talked to the manager right away. he called their guy that does the video audio part and the company that does it, and it's only a 2-week feed, so it typed over it, so they didn't have any way of going back to get it. But they did have video. And what happened on that was that Bonnie called Lisa and said, I think you need to get over here. I think this is Tiffany Daniels. And Lisa said, I'm clear away. I can't get there in time. And so Bonnie just failed to turn the tip in, is all it was. And when in January, one of her neighbor's girlfriends had a daughter that went missing, and it really upset her, and she realized she had never called. Or she said she figured Tiffany had been found by then or come home, so she didn't call.
Did this woman, her name is Bonnie, did she know that obviously she knew that Tiffany was missing, being that that's the reason she said that to that girl in the restaurant that day.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't she do anything right at the time?
I don't know. She said she just, she meant to, but she just didn't. She said she was afraid it really wasn't Tiffany, and she didn't want to upset everybody or upset me or anyone else. Honestly, Ed, people don't want to be involved. It's really strange at the tips you get, and they go, well, I was going to call, but I didn't think I should, and then they called, and now time has gone by, and there's no video. I mean, it was the same way out at the beach. We had, oh, yeah, I think she was in here about 2 weeks ago. You know, I was like, well, she's been missing for a month. If you thought she knew that, why didn't you call somebody 2 weeks ago? You know, there's a poster out front. And, I mean, it was typical. It's really sad. People don't want to be involved.
Well, I there's no doubt that sometimes people do infuse themselves into these stories and they're just outright lying. Okay, that does happen. It all sorts of cases where, in missing persons cases, where somebody says, well, I saw this woman at a convenience store, this missing woman at a convenience store. Cops go there, check out the video, and, you know, there's nothing on there. It's not that there's just...
Oh, that happens.
You know, that happens. But this is somebody who kind of knew you. You know, kind of, you know. You know, whereas in all those other cases, those are strangers. This person kind of knows you and still waits a month to turn in what would seem to be a decent lead in Tiffany's disappearance. Is there a personal...
She really thought it was credible for some reason. I think she thought she was just... But maybe it wasn't Tiffany. I don't know. I've gone over the scenario 1,000 times in my head. Now, you know, I wouldn't hesitate if I even thought they looked like someone I knew, but I have to put my mindset back then when I wasn't really aware of how bad things were with traffic and everything. What I have thought I was crazy and it was her or it wasn't her, or how would I you know, it's bad. It's really bad.
Right, and that would be the
differently to things, you know, because of what I've had to study and learn since she's been missing that I did back then, and I'm so ashamed of myself for the way I was prior to that. No one should wait till this hits home for them to really understand that there's a problem, but I think I was just like the majority of the world, and I thought it happened in third world countries, nothing was going on here, and I'm just, you know, I'm putting my nose where it doesn't belong, and that's the mindset that we as America have given ourselves. I don't see it. I have my blinders on. It's not happening to me. It's not happening. You know, put my blinders on. I don't care what's happening outside my blinders. I don't want to know. And that's just a mindset. But that's why it keeps happening, is because those of us that had our blinders on, oh, that's never going to happen again. And I hope that people understand that it can happen to you. It can happen to anybody.
Do you think that there are any personal reasons that this Bonnie did not turn that information in at the time?
No.
Okay, she's never had any problems with the law or anything. She didn't have any outstanding warrants or anything, whereas if she popped up on the police's radar that they might take her in for something else, anything like that?
Well, yes. I think Bonnie, I know Bonnie had a very big past in New Orleans, and I think that the thought that she might get tangled up with that again and get in trouble probably did cross her mind. Do I personally know everything she did back in those days? No, but I know that she probably did have some concerns as to why she didn't want to get involved with the police or anything that had to do with them.
All right, so maybe it's a scenario where Tiffany gets set up somewhere. She gets lured somewhere by somebody who's going to buy her artwork. She maybe says, meet me out at the beach. I'll buy it from you there. She gets out there. Something happens. Possible.
Well, I'll tell you the reason this lead hit us so hard, and this was the first lead that gave us a reason to think that trafficking could be instead of the drowning. That is what they were leading us to want to believe, that maybe she drowned, which was our first thought. It could have happened, but there's things that would have happened since then that hasn't happened, and so we got away. And once this lead came through, I was reading the paper, and in Panama City in June of 2013, a young woman was in her front yard, and guys in a van pulled up and grabbed her. And when she came to, they were in Mississippi in a hotel, and they had drugged her. She was naked, and they had her in the bathroom. Well, she came to, she climbed out the bathroom window, went down the road, got help, and they apprehended one of the guys, and they told her they were taking her to Louisiana for prostitution. They were going to take her to Louisiana to sell her. And that case came about with that guy getting an ankle bracelet only. And when she went back to Panama City, the other guy came after her, and they caught him too. Never heard too much about the case, and I said to my husband, there's something not right about that. Well, a couple of years ago, Pensacola had an undercover sting by Homeland Security that even Pensacola Police Department didn't know about because they weren't part of it. I think we had 3 agencies come in here, and over on, I think it was 49th Avenue, they raided a trailer that had young girls and women in it being held, and they arrested something like 5 or 6 men, and it was a ring that they had been looking at for 2 years. Now, that meant that those people were here in this town during the time that Tiffany disappeared, because they hit Panama City Beach first. And there was a woman that called, and Deborah told me that she was pretty sure that she saw Tiffany walking with a group of people or stumbling around with a group of people going down the boardwalk. And this was the day before they found her car, which would have been the 19th. No, it would have been the 18th that she said that she saw her on a Sunday. And she was stumbling going down with a bunch of people. And it was like there was a whole group of people there. And she said she remembered what some of the guys and the girls looked like. And she was, every time the girl stopped to gaze down, they said, keep going, and kept nudging her. And the guy in front was leading them. She says, it was like the whole group of them, they knew where they were going. She says, but I swear it looked like your daughter. So she talked to the police and told them that lead when Tiffany disappeared. Well, when she heard about this bust, she wanted to see pictures of these people, because she swears to this day that she won't forget what those people look like, that she could identify at least 2 of them for sure. But I've never been able to obtain pictures of the people they arrested and that, so she could see them. But it made a lot of sense to us when we started looking at this, that she saw a group of people, whether it was Tiffany with them or not, we don't know. But it just confirms to me that those people were on our beach. To me, it makes a lot of sense, and it follows exactly what they do, that they would have been trolling our beach from Panama City to Pensacola, about that time. And for her, that came out in January when they finally published that. So
January of what year? January of what year?
2014.
Okay.
So she came. There were some pretty bad people in this town during the time that Tiffany disappeared. Could it be a coincidence? If you believe in coincidences, yes. If not, then could it be a reality? Yes, it could be. And like I said, whether they took Tiffany or not, they could have taken someone else that might not have even been from here. We don't know what all they did. But it was a reality to us, a reality check that it can happen, and it can happen right here because it happened in Panama City. So,
okay.
People think it can't happen, but it can.
What do you say to those people who say that, well, it's pretty clear to them that Tiffany parked her car, got out of it, and went down to the beach, went for a swim and drowned? Any chance of that? Have the police ever talked to you about that?
That was their first thing, is that they really thought she had gone out. And I surveyed the situation. Could she have swam? We have a very weird current here. From what they described to me, and from what the marine people have said, is we have a strange current that doesn't run the way you think it would run. It's not a normal running current. It runs opposite of what you would think. And the proof of that was when the kayaker went missing too, that they never found his body, but where they found the kayak was really strange for him to have gone missing, where he went missing in the kayak to end up where he ended up. So we apparently have a very strange current out there that if you get in, it will pull you to an area where people don't normally look if you disappear from that area. So they've learned to go the opposite ends of it. Well, I don't know if Tiffany could have swam far enough out to get caught up in something like that, but I do know that the typical scenario would be you would take off your clothes, or you would take off something and leave it on the beach, and you would swim out. And let's say you didn't. Let's just say you walked straight out into the water. Well, if a body is moving, it won't be eaten upon. But if it gets caught upon, it can deteriorate. And then whenever it gets caught upon, is subject to also surface sometimes with storms and things. And we've had a lot of storms. All the things that would have come up on the shore, anything at all, if it's been found, it's not been reported to us. And the searches that class kids and everybody has done on the shoreline, it has not turned up anything of Tiffany's at all that we know of.
So they think that if she had gone out, so they think if she would have gone out to swim, whether it was just for a night swim, or maybe she just wasn't having the best thoughts in the world. Maybe, her boyfriend's moving away. She's having some money issues. She's having some roommate issues. She has, it seems, a lot of the maybe non-positive things going on, that either way that she would have been found.
They feel like something would have been found. Clothing, something would have surfaced by now. A lot of people don't pray for storms, but that was one of the first things Rodney and I prayed for, is for storms, because that turns it up out there. And if she's hung up on something, then it would surface. And I'm not the only family. I've read recently where another family of the missing that they think might have drowned too always prays that storm stirs it up, because it would help them surface and find their loved one, And so I said to Rodney, when we got the human trafficking tip, it was a lot better looking for her alive than it was waiting for a storm to turn up a body. I can tell you that.
Right. I need to ask you this. Were the keys to her car ever found? Or was it locked? What was the situation?
No, it was unlocked and the police have them.
So the vehicle sat there unlocked for 7 days, something like that, 6, 7, 8 days, unlocked at the beach with the keys in it.
That's what they're saying.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
We never saw it. That's what they told us, that they have them. I've never asked to see them.
Now, something else is, it's only been, when I say only, I mean in contrast, I've covered a disappearance in the 50s, 1950s. I've covered a disappearance in the 1960s, a couple disappearances from then, and several in the 70s. But it's been only 4.5, quote unquote, only 4.5 years. But just in that short time, you've had some scammers come around, haven't you? Maybe you can explain what that's like and what people need to look out for regarding this. What is going on with you and your family, Cindy?
Wow. Well, the first one we got was really a gut wrencher, and it seems like we don't ever get tips or extortion notices except on Friday nights for some reason. And I have Tiffany's page set to alert me when I get private messages, just because in case it's a lead or a tip. So I got this message at midnight that told me that they would tell me where her body was. Did I want to know where she was? And I was like, are you kidding me? And that they knew who killed her too, and where the body and the gun was and all this. And they were going to send me a recording of it. And they even had it recorded, and they would send that to me too. I had to send them some money. And so that was the week that our new Pensacola police chief was getting sworn in. Captain Alexander was going to Chief Alexander, and you couldn't have getting a police officer on the phone for $1 million. So Noelle and I tackled this ourselves. While they were talking, while the police supposedly were talking to them, there was a long gap there, and I saw that they had sent us the MP3 playing, and I played it, and it was immediately, I could tell it was a police officer, because he says that I pulled my backup gun from the back of my pants, and I shot her because she was suffering where I'd hit her in the head. And I knew right away it was a cop, and I knew whatever this was something strange. So I called Noelle, and within 15 minutes, Noelle had plugged it into a program she had and had identified it. It was a true story, and it was on YouTube, but has since been taken down, of a detective confessing from Panama City, Florida, when he killed his girlfriend. And this was him in court. This was the court case of the trial, and this was his true confession. Somebody had recorded it, and they had recorded that and sent that to me as if it was the person confessing that they had killed Tiffany. But I was like, how weird is it that this person that they said should send me ends up to be Panama City? Are they not? First of all, I was thinking, you're not very smart to know how close we are, and that case made national headlines back in the 80s or 90s, and everybody knew it, and it was on YouTube. So, I mean, you could have used something a little bit better, but it came back to be 6 IP addresses from Russia, but they ran it through a guy's Facebook account in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so they basically, the police said, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it because it's out of the country. We blah, blah, blah. We're not going after them. So that was our first one. And then our second one was a woman that sent us on a wild goose chase. However, she was using real names, numbers, and places, which made it even harder to dispute that she was lying. However, I was able to trace down every address and every clue that she gave us, and I ended up in Mexico. In Mexico, the address in Mexico, we had a connection there that was able to check that out too, and we were able to reveal her as a scammer, and I plastered that all over Facebook. And then I recently had the most dangerous one to me is the most recent one, Ed, which was a person who actually has a company name on the internet and is on LinkedIn. And he actually says that his company will help people who have had people kidnapped, and they'll get back their family members for X amount of dollars and everything. And he's the most dangerous one. And the reason he's so dangerous is because he is a real person, and he is in the United States, and he does have this company set up. And unfortunately, he has been hired by some corporations for security reasons and everything. And some of the stuff he tells you is true, and some of it's not. What makes him so dangerous is he has never, ever found a missing person. And if your loved one or someone you know, and you know where they are, and you know they're there, and you just want them back, and you know they're there, this is the person you want to hire, because he breaks all barriers. He doesn't have any rules, regulations, or nothing. He goes in like G.I. Joe, jerks them out, scares the heck out of everybody there, threatens them all, and he'll get your loved one back, but you are going to pay him $15,000 to $20,000. If you know where your loved one is, you're able to go in and get that person out. You'll figure it out if you really want them out. You don't need to pay this man that, because his tactics are bad. I would tell you his name, but I'll be honest with you, if you want a private message to anybody,
no, we're not going to mention this guy's name. No, we're not going to. We're not going to mention. We're not going to mention his name. All we need to know is that a reputable foundation like Class Kids that you've been working with, they are at direct odds with this guy.
Oh yes. This man is this to me is the most dangerous one because he's real, and it's hard to say no when you're desperate. I mean, you got to understand there isn't anything I wouldn't do to get Tiffany back, but the one thing I'm not going to do is enable people who are liars and thieves and prey on people like us. I'm not going to keep enabling them to keep doing that, and when I can expose them, I will. Unfortunately, that gets a little dangerous with some of these people. That's the reason I would never really give this person's name out, is because he's dangerous. Okay. He's real. These other people are in other countries sitting at a computer and eating their snacks and going over websites just picking on praise, thinking that somebody will be stupid enough or vulnerable enough to do it, and they get their money too. But this type of person is the one you want to beware of. Okay. But there are ways to figure them out. You just have to be diligent. You have to question. You have to be knowledge. You have to arm yourself with knowledge. You cannot let your emotions take over, because you got to understand this is a person that could be looking for your kid, and you want to make sure that you're well aware of everything about them. And all it takes is there's enough tools out there for any family to figure out if this is a good person or a bad person coming after them. And the psychics will come after you too, but just remember this, that there's not been one psychic to this day that's ever found a body, alive or dead, of a missing person. Not one documented case.
That's true. What's it been like? I know it's been tough, Cindy, the last 4.5 years. And, what do you do on a daily and weekly basis? I know you're working on this. And in fact, you told me before the conversation started, you now have a new detective on Tiffany's case. And so I know that you correspond with the Pensacola Police Department fairly, regularly. What's it all been like for you?
It's been a terrible learning experience. I've learned a lot, not the way I wanted to learn it. It's also been sad because seeing the things that I see and knowing the law and the way it works, it is hard to keep your faith in the law, because it does seem like in so many instances the smallest thing can set a criminal free. And I think that we all need to pay attention to the laws and lobby for better laws for things and for punishment for the criminals that commit these laws, commit these heinous crimes such as trafficking and crimes against children and people, period. But it's been very hard, but it's been a very big learning experience. Met a lot of good people. I can truly say that the disappeared episode, which we didn't really ever want to do any shows like that, and we were scared to, didn't think we could do it. But I get messages from all over the world. Some of them in English, some of them not. Some of them take me a while to decipher, but I respond to each and every one of them the best I can. And I can literally say the whole world is looking for Tiffany. So it's given me a new perspective on humanity and just how far people get touched by certain situations. And it's just really amazing when these people reach out to you, especially from all these other countries and things, and it's just been amazing, the outpour of support. And we do a lot of work with things. We started working with Refuge for Women because we realized that if Tiffany is a victim of trafficking, that when we get her home, she will need much needed guidance and help, and we are not equipped to do that. And we realize that there is no place around here equipped for that either. So we're working with Refuge for Women, which is a wonderful faith-based organization that takes care of women who have been sexually exploited or trafficked. And it's a 9 to 12-month program. And we realize you can rescue all the people out there you want to, but if you can't get them the proper help afterwards and the guidance and what they need, that you're not doing them very much of a justice. So we're doing things like that. We're trying to be more aware of the situation and get the word out and help educate people. And we work with a lot of the families of the missing, and Pensacola has the only monument or memorial to the missing in the whole United States. And when Joanne Otto went missing back in the 80s, her mother had this commission. Kathy Hoside had an artist come in and do a sculpture that sits beautifully on our waterside downtown. And we are the only ones that have anything like that.
where can the listeners go to find out more about Tiffany and what you've been doing and her case? Are you on Facebook? Do you have a website?
Yes.
Give the listeners
Yes.
that information now if you could.
It's Help Find Tiffany on Facebook. And we don't have, that is really it. We shut down the website after a while when we went almost a year without one single tip on it. So we had to shut that down. And we get all of our tips through private messaging or anything there, or through the Pensacola Police Department or Class Kids. Class Kids has been the biggest resource for us ever, and Calls to Rescue is also here, and they work with us all the time.
Okay. And of course, there's the disappeared episode that people can still find maybe on YouTube, and there's a couple other places that you can kind of watch it technically illegally, but it's out there. And of course, she's on
Against the Tide. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and CharlieProject.org.
Against the Tide is the episode.
Yeah, Against the Tide is the name of the episode. Thank you for that. Thank you. And then, of course, on NamUs, Tiffany is on NamUs as well. All those places.
Yes, she's on every national database, including the overseas one, too.
Okay. Cindy, any last words before we conclude this interview?
No, I'm just thank you for the work that you do for the families. It's our way of keeping them out there, and that's the main thing, is to keep the names out there and keep these faces out there to help us find these people and bring them home to their loved ones.
Cindy, thank you for being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that was my early 2018 interview with Tiffany's mother, Cindy. I thank her for joining me and all of you 6.5 years ago. It seems like yesterday. For this summation, I want to touch upon what I mentioned following the interview from the original episode. Then I want to get into what has transpired since, just to catch all of you up on things. Then I want to get into a few more items that need my insight. First, what I said in the original summation from 2018. I went over the most likely theories for Tiffany's disappearance. The roommate harmed Tiffany. The supervisor at the school harmed Tiffany. Tiffany committed suicide. And number 4, somebody only known to Tiffany or a stranger is the cause of her disappearance. And if I have to be picky, there was a 5th possibility I mentioned in that summation, although I can't say much about that now. Of those 4, here in 2024, are they still all factually viable? I believe they are. There are no facts to rule any of them out, although there may be circumstantial reasons to rule at least some of them out. However, as of October 2024, there is nothing scientific to cause us to rule out those 4 choices. Meaning, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, there are still many avenues of inquiry. So, what has transpired in the last 6.5 years? Well, a lot. I'll start with this. If you didn't know, Tiffany's roommate and that supervisor are dead. Nothing suspicious, nothing controversial, regular health issues, I believe, but they are deceased. So if either harmed Tiffany, they got away with it, at least here in the material world. And if they knew something about her disappearance, even if they didn't realize it, they can never come forward now with that information. This is certainly unfortunate, and really this is stunning given that Tiffany's case is only 11 years old. To have 2 persons of interest, or at least 2 people who could be helpful, be gone is unique. The other piece of news that I think is relevant is there is a new group in the panhandle of Florida that is assisting Tiffany's parents. When did this start? Within the last couple of years, I think. And Tiffany's family really believes these people will bring about a resolution to her disappearance. What is their main line of investigation? I think it's continuing with the idea that the Daniels have always had, and that is that Tiffany was murdered and someone staged her vehicle where it was found. As for my contact with Tiffany's family, I've had none in 2024. There have not been many posts on their Facebook page either, although one of the last ones seems to have something to do with people who are getting in the way of the investigation. I'm not sure what's going on there. For me, and I'll say this very quickly, the calculation continues to be, what are the odds that a young woman who seemed to be having a tough time in 2013 would then, on top of all of that, be murdered? Is that more likely than her walking off or her harming herself or having some accident happen to her? What do you think? With that, I'll leave the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.